Greetings and welcome to the Business of Agriculture podcast with me, Damian Mason. You heard all that in the introduction. Got a great episode for you today because I've got two great guests. That's right. We're talking about creating opportunities, profitable opportunities out here in the agricultural marketplace. And I've got two guys that are going to explain to you how they've created profitable opportunities through a bit of marketing, entrepreneurialism, forward thinking, and finding niches. They are the Hitzfield brothers with 7 Sons Farms in Roanoke, Indiana, not too far from my own farm, and we're going to be covering all that stuff, giving you great ideas that you can use. These guys are an open book. They've done very, very well, and they don't think that they necessarily need to keep it a secret. Before we get to the Brice and Blaine Hitzfield, I want to remind you that this episode of the Business of Agriculture, like so many before it, is brought to you by Harvest Profit. Harvest Profit is a software solution that your agricultural enterprise can benefit from. A software solution that helps your agricultural enterprise be what it's supposed to be. Profitable. Go to harvestprofit.com and get your free 14-day trial. Okay, Brice and Blaine Hitzfield, just so you know, dear listener or viewer, yes, I said viewer, because they not only are an audio podcast where you get your audio podcast, Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, you can view these at the Damian Mason channel. Simply go to YouTube and type in Damian Mason channel. There you'll find the Business of Agriculture and the Do Business Better podcast. Please hit subscribe. It won't cost you nothing, and you'll get great content like this. Brice and Blaine Hitzfield are 2 of 7 brothers with this Hitzfield family. They've been on my radar for a while. I know who they are. They kind of know who I am. We're not too far apart geographically, but I've always thought, man, they got a neat little thing going over there. Time to bring them on the Business of Agriculture podcast. Brice, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dami. Glad to be here.
And you know why I started with you, Brice? Because you're younger, and I'm the youngest of 9 kids. And I know what being in a big family is like. It's always like hey, Bob, Joe, Tom. It's like, no,
go down the list.
Name is Damian, okay? Mom, It's Damian.
Yep.
Anyways, that's why I'm starting with you, Brice, and then brother Blaine, older brother, but not oldest, right?
Correct. Second youngest. Glad to be here.
All right. So they head up different parts of the operation. So what we're going to do is give a little background about Hitzfield's farming operation background overview so we can just start there. Because just so you know, dear listener, they didn't start with 10,000 acres of prime prairie grandpa's land in central Illinois. They started with not much and said, how can we be more profitable with what we got? So let's go ahead and just give me some background.
Brice, you want to roll with it?
Brice, roll with it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Blaine. Yeah, so really, gosh, we got started. Let's see, that was back in 2001 is when the 7 Sons business was established. But really, probably all really got my parents or my dad really was, he grew up excavating actually, and with my grandpa. Back in the 80s is when he got into agriculture, and he was actually we were actually conventional. I guess it'd be we were running a confinement hog operation, and farming Blaine was around 1,200 acres of row crops, I believe.
It landed between 1,000 to 1,200 acres, and then we had the 200 head farrow to finish hog operation at that time. So,
pretty standard thing. Of course, getting into it in the 80s, I hope to goodness you waited until about 82 or 3, because getting in 1980 or 81 meant that you just took a whole bunch of money and just basically threw it out the window, because we all know what happened in the 80s. Go ahead.
Yep. So then my mom, actually, she in 92 when she had me, and by the way, there are 7 brothers total, so it goes down the list: Blake, Blaine, Brice, Brock, Brooks, Bruce, Brant. So my parents really wanted to confuse everyone, but
I guess.
after having me, my mom was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and her health quickly just went downhill. She was told within 5 years she'll be in a wheelchair, and she won't be able to have any more kids, the whole 9 yards. Well, so that my mom kind of set out on this journey to figure out what on earth is going on. Why am I sick at this age? What is it? What's happening? So, and they had her on a lot of medication, the whole 9 yards. And the more research my mom did, she figured out, that a lot of this, it feels like, has to do with food. You are what you eat. So, my mom, immediately changed her diet, and within a couple of years, just turned completely around. Obviously had more kids yet. And let's see. So that was probably in the early 90s when, we were kind of figuring out or my mom was figuring out, man, maybe possibly we might be a part of this problem, So we started transitioning in the early 90s, getting out, start tearing up some of the cornfields, bean fields, planting them to grass, and started getting cattle, the whole 9 yards, and started, more of the direct marketing route with an on-farm store was originally where we started.
So you're just a little kid. So you're not doing this. This is parents, and parents still have a side business. Are they still running excavation and doing other business and doing this on the side? Or they say, no, man, we're going to go full tilt?
Dad, Brice, because you're still young at this time. Dad was still working excavating at that time. So the typical side business added on to the farm as well. But I think the biggest thing for us was that, Dad was struggling economically on the farm, and then just from their own personal experiences, working through the health crisis in the family, just kind of got to the point where they weren't passionate about what they were doing on the farm anymore. So that's where they really turned a direction more towards regenerative. The term regenerative wasn't even out there at that time, right. But we went down that path, and there wasn't any goal of developing a direct marketing business. But Damian, you were talking about the direct marketing that you were doing with the quarters and halves of beef. We just kind of got families and friends that started asking us for some of our products, and a direct marketing business started in the year 2000. So we did sell out of the farrow to finish hog business. It was right there. I think it was around 96.
Yeah, late 90s.
Yeah, that was the one timing thing I think that worked well for us, because the market really fell out a year after we sold all the hogs. But it's
the old thing. It's better to be lucky than good. Just so you know, dear listener or viewer, if you're wondering what they're alluding to, first off, farrow to finish, if you're not a hog person, because remember, we have people that are in the cranberry business that listen to this. That means that they take mama sows, breed them, and then produce the piglets, and then take them all the way up until they get butchered and made into pork chops. So it's farrowing to finish. Anyway, if you're wondering what they're talking about, timing and better to be lucky than good, the Hitzfield boys can tell you they just decided to get out of the hog business in 96 in the conventional capacity. What happened 1 to 3 years after that?
The price, I forget what the price went down to, 20 cents a pound, maybe?
Seven.
Okay.
I know. 7 cents a pound for finished hogs. You couldn't truck them for what they would fetch at the market.
Correct. So we were very fortunate on that timing, but I just want to say it was I know for my parents, a very tough decision. Everything they had invested in up until that point, right. We're talking 200 south. So there was a sizable amount of infrastructure that you just don't repurpose or liquidate. So that was, and I think that's the tough thing that we have in the farming. Farming is capital heavy, so it can be difficult to pivot and make changes. And I just have to, applaud my parents for being willing to make a pivot. And timing wise, it worked out good with the hog market, and timing wise, it worked out really good with starting a direct marketing business in the year 2000.
Yeah. So there you are. It's basically 20 years ago or so. And really the internet exists. Amazon does, but nobody knows about it. So taking people back in time, the idea that you would go and buy a product, a steak or whatever, you wouldn't normally think of some Joe is just going to hop on their computer in Columbus, Ohio, and then buy 100 pounds of meat from somebody sight unseen on the internet. It didn't happen. I mean, it does now, but it didn't 20 or so years ago. So kind of then your parents got out of the hog business and they said, we're going to do more and more of this pasture-based production. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. Yep. Pasture-based production. So we downsized from that 1,000 acres. Okay. The farm at that time, my parents owned 20 acres, but they leased a lot of ground. We basically downsized to only ground that's owned in the family, which was at 500 acres. So I always like to say we went from about 1,000 acres to 500 acres. Back when we were 1,000 acres, it was a chore to support one full-time family. Yeah. That was a struggle. Fast forward to today, we're half the land, but there are about 25 full-time positions employed on our farm on that 25 acres.
So your parents own 20 acres. How'd you get from 20 to 500? Just because I'm curious.
It would grew over. My grandfather bought a couple of farms, so we leased from him, and then we bought some farms from him. So it's kind of just consolidated down to this 500 acres between all the family.
All right. So Brice, tell me what happens on those 500 acres today. Then we're going to get into pasture poultry. What happens on those 500 acres today? How are they split?
Yep. So today we're running about 250 head of 100% grass-fed cattle. We have about 250 free-range hogs that are rotated throughout, primarily the woods. So of that 500 acres, about 200 of it are in woods. So we're running primarily the hogs through that. And then currently we have about 10,000 laying hens that are out on pasture in portable buildings in the warmer months. Now in the winter months here, we move all the birds into these high tunnel greenhouses, these long 400-foot greenhouses that have roll-up sides. They still have complete outdoor access. But yeah, it's about 10,000 laying hens. And then we have about, 30 head of bison, I think is what my grandpa is running on that 500 acres as well. So
okay, so 500 acres that's wooded or pastured. None of it's in your basic corn, soybean production, any of that stuff.
Nope.
It's all in some capacity grazing or pastured or woods property.
There's about 100 acres of woods. The rest of it's and perennial pasture. So
is it one? Okay.
And then those cows, the numbers on cows, but obviously those are brood cows having calves, and then you take the calves, you don't sell them to stockers and finishers and feed yards. You take those calves, and tell me about that operation.
Well, we actually, I'm going to bump in here, Brice. We actually transitioned away from the cow-calf operation. We've worked with partners on that now. We bring in around 700-pound grass-fed calves, and we finish them by fall, early winter on our.
So you are the finisher. Instead of doing it in a feed yard method, you're doing it out there on grass.
Correct. Yep.
Correct. It's kind of the same thing with the laying hens as well. Like we used to actually raise day-old chicks and bring them up to that 16 to 17 weeks of age, right before they're about ready to lay their first egg. And now we're working with some other growers. One particular grower, Moyer's Chicks out in Pennsylvania. So we get all of our birds in as ready to lay pullets. So it's kind of the same deal, and even with the hogs as well. So with farrowing hogs, we don't even do that anymore. We contract that out to a few guys up in LaGrange. We do an awesome job there. So we primarily focus on the finishing and production side.
By the way, LaGrange is code word for those of us from Northern Indiana, meaning those are Amish producers that then take these, and are they Berkshire spots, some sort of more heritage breed?
They're heritage breeds. There's about 4 or 5 different heritage breeds that we're working with.
4 or 5 different heritage breed hogs. And by the way, dear listener and viewer, heritage breed means essentially the breeds that used to exist that sort of went away because they didn't fit the confinement, more industrialized production model. And so now they're coming back, and there are foodies and chefs. And I wrote about this in my book, Food Fear. If you have not picked up your copy about the business of food and agriculture, you should pick up your copy of Food Fear. And I talk about, for instance, Berkshires, a breed that kind of went away and now is exceedingly popular because chefs believe it has a better flavor profile. Okay, so you're bringing in now hogs that you're just saying, okay, we're not doing with the farrowing. We're going to take them when they're weaned, and you're bringing in 20 to 40 pound feeder pigs essentially, and then you're putting them into your system. You're doing the same thing now with laying hens. Let somebody else contract grow them from hatchling, fledgling up to laying hen age, which is what, about 6 months?
Right.
Yeah, that's about it's a little over 4 months, actually, the birds we're getting in.
Okay, so a little over 4-month-old birds that you're bringing in, then they're ready to start laying. Then you do the same thing with cattle. All right, you got a lot going on. What's the division between the 7 kids? I know that Brice has his own now entrepreneurial venture on infrastructure and products that he's selling, and you got all this other stuff. Who does what?
Sorry, Blaine. Yeah, so my brother Blake, the oldest, so he's actually one who manages and owns the beef operation and the pork operation. And then the next brother down, Blaine, he handles all the direct marketing. So that's basically that's the Seven Sons brand, if you will. Then yeah, I handle. I have a small poultry equipment business on the side called Hen Gear, and then we also. I handle and manage the egg processing as well. So, and that's all, and these are all separate companies as well. So Blake has his company where, with the cattle and the hogs. Blaine obviously has Seven Sons. That's the marketing fulfillment company. And then, I have the Hen Gear, and then we have Scrambled Acres, which is the egg processing. And then you go down the line, Brock actually, I believe, helps out with a lot of even our podcasts and our video editing. And then we head down with Brooks. Brooks heads up a lot of the Graze Cart business that we talked about earlier there, which is our software, our e-commerce business as well. And then my brother Brice, number 6, he's the one that manages and owns the Lane Hens. And again, he has his own business there. So basically Brice, he sells, his eggs to Seven Sons. Blake is obviously selling his beef and pork to Seven Sons, choosing to do that. So like I say, everything has to stand on its own 2 feet. The youngest brother, Brant, he works for Seven Sons, handling the fulfillment side of it all, or the fulfillment side of Seven Sons. And let's see, then my dad is the primary landowner. My dad and my grandpa are primary landowners. So we're leasing and renting ground from them. And same thing with a lot of the buildings around here and the different pieces of.
So Damian, when you look at Seven Sons from the outside, it looks like it's all one business. And we're unified on the direction of our business, the mission behind it. But there's 9 different LLCs behind there with multiple owners. Some of us are partners in the same businesses, some of us are not. But a big point I wanted to make here, it takes a lot to get 7 families working together on the same farm. And one thing that we've done is we've been very intentional about creating space, one for individual different preferences on quality of life, how hard everyone wants to work. We're accountable to our own businesses. Yeah. And we also get the reward working hard on those businesses. So it creates that nice, healthy elbow room, and also keeps accounting pretty clean. So we don't have one enterprise subsidizing another.
Well, yeah, we've been, all of us that grew up in it understand that there's these people that live in the suburbs like me out here in North Phoenix, Paradise Valley, Arizona, that half the year where I am, and they think it's all just, something out of old McDonald's farm. I'm like, first off, it's a lot more moving parts, a lot more technology, but also this idea that it's all, there's been many a disagreement over who the hell was in charge of this entity and all that. So keeping things separate is very good. We'll come back and ask you a bunch more questions, but I got to take this brief time out to remind our listeners and our viewers that this episode of the Business of Agriculture is brought to you by Harvest Profit, a software solution that works as hard for your agricultural enterprise as you work for your agricultural enterprise. Nick Horeb, smart entrepreneurial young man out of North Dakota, founded Harvest Profit, not because he's a software guy, not because he's like some accounting genius, because he said, I see a need for a product that can help these ag people be more profitable. So it's a software solution that you can use, and for your on-farm accounting, managing your farms, your inputs, your capital. You got millions of dollars of capital at risk. Why not manage it the way you should? Check out harvestprofit.com for a free 14-day trial. Okay. Pasture raised, first off, about the business entities, it's very smart you're keeping everything separated. And even then, there's probably still, once in a while, maybe a disagreement. Yes?
There is, but it sure works a lot better when you have that independence, when you have that space. Mm-hmm. It really comes down to, and in life, period, it's you're managing through conflicts that arise and manage through them. If your expectation is complete conflict resolution, you're always going to be disappointed. So it's creating that forgiveness.
I know that we've done things where you can do certain things on a handshake, but then also with the person that farms my farmland, I said, we do these agreements. First off, if we ever had to, then we can, dispute this because we have an agreement. But I said, also, let's always, this way we remember what you agreed to and what I agreed to. And that's why we do this, because good fences keep good neighbors, good agreements keep good business relationships. Pasture-raised meat, pasture-raised eggs, pasture-raised poultry, pork, begins with pasture. Who the hell takes care of this on your operation? I heard a bunch of things that you guys all do. Who's in charge of the actual ingredient that starts it all?
Again, that's where my older brother Blake, he has excelled on the production side of things. And we've all kind of been there helping from time to time throughout the years. Blake really heads up the farm operations. But Brice, for a while, you were involved in the egg production, the pastured egg production. Bruce now handles all of those lane hens, 11,000 lane hens. So between Bruce and Blake, and that's something we really try to do because we are diversified, Damian. So that means you can get, you can have your focus divided very quickly if you're not careful. So there's where Blake and Bruce really have focused on the farm production side, do an incredible job. It allows me to focus on the marketing side of things. My job is they produce it and I've got to get it sold. And we have to have conversations about who maintains the risk, after a product is produced. We're producing a product that we have more cost in, more labor in. So it really just doesn't work to take it to the auction barn if it doesn't sell.
Right.
And that's part of it. We do value added. We call it value added stacked enterprises, where we're stacking enterprises on the same acre. But a lot of farmers get into it thinking, all I got to do is stack these enterprises on the same acre and I'm adding value. No, you're actually just adding a liability. It only becomes value once it's sold to the right customer at the right price. At that moment in time, it becomes value. Before that, it's all liability. So that's something we learned the tough way.
So I was going to get into that about lessons learned. And I like this because, again, we're talking about opportunities out here. And we know that this is a little different thing. The person is driving their planter right now through a 160 acre chunk of ground in Nebraska saying, I don't know, man, it sounds like a lot of messing around. It isn't. You have to make more dollars per acre, obviously, than the person that's in their corn planter right now, because you've got more inputs of time, effort, capital, et cetera, et cetera. Do you care to share with me what the dollars per acre are off that?
Well, we're just out in Pennsylvania, and we were asked to give a presentation on the net value, the margin per acre. So it is, and it's really increased over time as we build our customer base and as we've scaled the different enterprises. But we can run roughly 75 to 100 lane hens on 1 acre throughout the year. That's the carrying capacity. We can also run at least 1 steer on that same acre. And then we can run at least 2 hogs being rotated throughout the land, or that 1 acre on a per year basis. So if you take all that value, we sell everything direct to the customer. We have a net margin of around $7,000 to $9,000 per acre when all those critters are on the same acre. Now we have 500 acres. We don't, obviously the cattle and the hogs are in the woods as much. So, but on average, we have about 150 acres that do see all of those animal units on top of them. And that's what, and obviously we have more labor in our model, but we don't mind that. We're getting enough value from the product. We're trading that efficiency labor with enough margin per acre to pay us all very well on the farm.
So the thing about agriculture that we all know, and we'll have Brice comment on this, and then I want to hear from both of you, of course, on this. I've been around this my entire life, and I know how some of these ag people think. They think like producers, and they almost can't stand the idea that somebody's making a nickel. So what do they always do? Well, son of a bitch, those Hitzfields, they're out there selling it for this. You know what we ought to do? Let's do what they're doing and sell it cheaper. And I'm like, you ag people are the only people I know. And I've been around business. I worked in corporate America. You are the most willing to jump into something and give it away more than anybody I know. It's asinine. Are you being copied by people that have that mentality? Huh, well, let's just go ahead and do what they're doing and do it for half price. Like, why? Why do you want to give away margin? It's called business. You can make money. Tell me about it. What's going on?
Yeah, and I don't, golly, Blaine, I guess, Blaine, you'd probably be better at this, and I don't. And are we really truly being copied, though, by folks in our industry, though? Like, try with that mentality, though, that has not been the vibe or feeling I've gotten.
Well, it always looks easy. I mean, looking on the outside, and there's tons of people who've gotten in and out of this and thought, man, if I could just sell it for, a little bit less than say 7 Sons, I'll be able to capture the market. The reality is, it's a lot of work to capture the trust of a customer. and no one's giving away customers for free. I mean, it's a high value thing to earn the customer's business, and you just find out it's not an easy thing to do, and you need to be able to capture those margins in order to build the business infrastructure. And I think that's what a lot of people find out, and they find out that marketing's it's not as easy as what it seems on the surface. So, and that's actually one of the things we learned is that you want to be careful before you start producing a bunch of value added products before you have put time into building a customer base. But the great thing about what we do on the online marketing side of things is that you can start building your audiences before you have product ready, which is something we've learned the hard way, but we also share with other farms. Get started marketing.
I think that it's dead on. You got to be a salesperson. And so my 13 years of having my little beef operation, my niche beef operation, I worked at the selling part of it. And I one time had somebody call me up and started whittling me on price. And I said, you know what? I really think you ought to go to Walmart and buy the tube of processed beef there. And so where does this go?
There is an expectation though that there's this expectation though that farmers, that we can't be, there's a limit to how much profit we should be able to make on a per acre basis. And we've really had to get over those. Coming from a commodity price background, we underpriced our product getting started. And that was a big mistake that we made. There's just a lot of overheads in doing the type of business that we have. So,
all right, this is a niche, and niches over time become commoditized. You will be copied, and then others will say, well, Cargill could say, we're going to just go ahead and do what Seven Sons is doing on 20 times that scale, and we're going to throw the money at it to do it. Does that happen, do you think?
I think it happens to like you just said, every niche and every industry over time. But we've always, from our perspective, and the reason that we have focused at Seven Sons, and we serve over 13,000 active customers. So if you look back at the last 12 months, we've served over 13,000 customers, and we have an individual relationship with those 13,000 customers. And what we really focus on doing is building and nurturing that trust. Because if there's one thing that can't be commoditized, it's things like trust, integrity. Those can't be commoditized. They can't be enforced. They can't be regulated. Trust can't be regulated. It really can't. And so that's where we've really focused on going deep with building the customer relationship, using social media, using email, using YouTube. That's how we've built that trust, even on a remote basis. Now, we do a lot of things here to bring customers to the farm. Not all of our customers can make it here. And fortunately, we're leveraging the online marketing platforms to build that trust. And that's where we're focused when it comes, when we look at the future, knowing that things like regenerative, organic will be commoditized. Organic's already commoditized. The next will be this regenerative food movement. That will be commoditized. But trust can't be.
I really like that. That's a good thing. And I want to, before we get into Brice's entrepreneurial venture, because remember, dear listener and viewer, the one thing that you can't do is you can't sit still. You got to always say, we're going to move into this direction. We're going to experiment with this. We're going to, and especially, mothers, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention. You got 7 kids there that want to be in this entity. All 7 are in, right? All 7 are in.
7.
Okay, you talked about trust. You also said previously, Blaine, when we were talking about this, the one thing that you also saw happen now that there is a customer that 25 years ago wouldn't just log on to an internet website and swipe their credit card for food. It's one thing like, yeah, okay, I'll buy a book online, hence Amazon's beginnings. Or then it was, I'll buy a set of sneakers online. But by God, it wasn't going to be something you ingest. You still went to the store or the market, even a farmer's market for that. So you talked about a thing called a convenience gap. And I think that's really an interesting concept because the person that's out here in ag usually thinks like a producer, but the consumer doesn't give, frankly, 2 hoots in hell about the producer's mindset. Yeah, they might say, I want to know how it was raised, but what do they really want? And that's where you keyed into it. Trust. And
well, there's 3 things. When we look at, if we're going to be successful at connecting with the customer, we need to compete in the economy of quality, the economy of trust, But then the one that us farmers completely fail on is the economy of convenience. Okay. So that's where we've recognized that if we're going to be successful, we have to close that convenience gap, because there's so much opportunity for a farmer and all kinds, no matter how they're marketing their product and what protocols they're following, it's pretty easy to increase your quality a cut above whatever is on the commodity, whatever is at Walmart's, on Walmart's shelf. You can do that. That's part of what you do. You can add quality. And just because you're a farmer and you're starting a direct marketing business selling locally, you're just going to have a trust factor that's already built in. But what a lot of farms don't realize is, to be successful, you also have to close that convenience gap. So, and I'm seeing online all kinds of food companies selling things, niche products like grass-fed beef, and they're being very successful. These food companies, they're just digital marketing companies selling a niche product. The reason they are succeeding online is because they are closing that convenience gap. So
yeah, I was glad it came from you. These people that keep up with my stuff and that read my books know that I have put it out there. These people that read my books know that I talk a lot about this. That we've got production down. 100 years ago, we still didn't. But starting 100 years ago, by golly, hybridization of seed, mechanization, chemistry, et cetera, by God, we got really good at production. Now let's realize what's next. And it's going to be story of production. It's going to be niche. It's going to be food that speaks to me, that, whatever. And then convenience. I agree with you. Quality, trust, and convenience, 3 tenets of the thing. Brice is sitting here saying, like a lot of us, yeah, oldest brother gets to walk into this thing. Second oldest brother gets to walk into this thing. What the hell is there for me? So he sees this need because he's growing the pasture-raised hens, and he's doing pasture-raised eggs, and, typical middle child out here. Yeah, just go take care of stuff, Brice. Let us do the thinking. And then he comes up with this product called Hen Gear. Talk to me.
Yeah. So that was probably 15 years ago when we first got into the laying hens. And dear listener, the hens are out here, they're pasture, but they're really not. They're not in the pasture all the time because they get eaten by hogs. Real quickly, tell them what happens. That way it sort of sets up the product you created. Yeah. So they are out on pasture in portable buildings. We are using electrified fencing that, it's just temporary fencing that surround our buildings. For example, our current building that we're using now is like a 20 by 48 on skids. That's moved every day. And the birds have full outdoor access. And those buildings, they basically just have their main essentials like water, feed, water, and then their nesting boxes. And those buildings are moved every day along with the fencing. But
and by the way, the hens usually come in at night so they don't get eaten by coyotes, right?
Yep. We have solar lighting the whole 9 yards, and we have guard dogs, or Great Pyrenees guard dogs that keep away the nighttime predators, especially. But
do good against owls, though. I've never seen a Great Pyrenees take to air against an owl. So hens,
so they're patrolling that as well. Yep. And in the past we've used geese as well. They do a great job of keeping away the hawks. Actually the dogs though have been kind of the new deal that's worked out very well for us.
All right, so you mentioned a word there that some of our folks are like, what do you mean nesting boxes? Because they don't just hang out in their nest. What else happens when these hens go into the nesting boxes? They
are laying their eggs. Yep. So that's when I'm sorry.
You're selling eggs, obviously.
Yeah, we're obviously selling eggs. You gotta be able to sell a clean, unbroken egg. So at least when we first started, there was this big gap between, the small backyarder and the small poultry farmer versus, compared to the conventional guys when it came to equipment. So, at that time, you virtually had to build a lot of your own nesting boxes out of wood or steel. They were just basic individual boxes that a hen could go in. You had straw or some form of bedding in the box, and hen goes in, lays her eggs. And the issue with that was that you get a lot of, with a lot of traffic of hens going in and out, you get a lot of broken eggs. The eggs would get really dirty, the whole 9 yards. And again, you cannot sell that. And if you're going to spend time washing, you're going to spend a lot of time washing those eggs. So, and obviously the conventional poultry operations, they've had this equipment for years. Roll out nesting boxes, the designs where, the floors are sloped, eggs roll down onto a conveyor belt or into a separate compartment to keep them safe, the whole 9 yards there. And so virtually what we did, we set out to come up with our own nesting box that resembled a lot, to help bridge that gap, if you will. So we partnered with a local manufacturer here, and took us several years to kind of come up with what we were, what we needed. And so it wasn't long, we were having farms coming out and visiting and seeing our nesting boxes and even our coops as well. There wasn't really, at that time, our portable buildings were old semi trailers that we converted into chicken houses, pulled around throughout the pasture every day. There wasn't any
very pretty, very picturesque.
Man, beautiful pasture ornaments.
What the high-end consumer wants to see is that their hens and their eggs are coming from, an old roadway freight hauling semi-trailer being dragged around the mud by an old John Deere. That's exactly what
goofy as all get out. So yeah, so there wasn't really anything out there for laying hens that were efficient, on pasture. And so we actually we realized that the produce world was starting to come out with these greenhouses on skids. And there was actually we saw a few other small guys trying these out with laying hens. We're like, let's partner with a manufacturer there and try to come up with something that was strong and robust, that could handle the rough terrain. And that was the next thing we went into as well with our chicken houses. So again, it took us several years to come up with all this, and we started having farmers coming out visiting and wanting to, like, hey, can you get us some of these nesting boxes or even these chicken coops? Oh, sure, we'll go ahead, yeah, do that. And that just really started to take off. So in December of 2017 is when we launched the Hen Gear website, and that is when it exploded. Within that first year, we had about 1,000% increase in sales that first year alone. And, so I actually, during that process, that time period there is when I transitioned out of the laying hens and handed that over to my brother, Brice, who now manages that. And he can continue to grow that the whole 9 yards. And so I focus primarily now on the Hen Gear, selling those direct
chicken coops and boxes, and a more efficient, effective way to still be organic, still be pasture raised, whatever you want to do, but it's it's modernizing what could have been an antiquated system, or worse yet, an ugly ass system where you're using old roadway freight hauling trucks.
Yeah. And, tried to make it affordable, because at that time, the small guys could not afford a lot of this really, this nice equipment that the convention guys had.
Brice, one thing that I think you've done well with the Hen Gear business is you've really merged. You've taken the innovations that that the industrial system has come up with, some really cool innovations, scaled them down to a level that works for a farm that's more our scale, between 1,000 to 10,000 hens. And of course, you didn't realize it, but you also created a product that these backyarders and homesteaders really wanted as well, and that became like a market segment you didn't even see coming. That's really probably become the biggest market segment. Yeah. You've set up about 7,000 farms and backyarders with these.
Nice. Over 7,000 customers right now.
7,000 customers you set up with. So if a person listening to this right now says, I want 50 birds, you got a system for them. If they say I want 5,000, you got a system for them?
Yes. Yep.
Hen Gear.
Hen Gear. Yep. Hengear.com.
Hengear.com. Where's all this go? Where's Seven Sons go? Where's Hen Gear go? Where does you got another thing, Graze Cart, another neat innovation you came up with. Tell me about that, Blaine.
Yeah, so Graze Cart was a result of trying to merge online e-commerce with food products, items that weigh. Chuck roast doesn't weigh the same when you get back from the butcher. Trying to merge a regional online food business with the typical e-commerce solutions that are out there was really difficult for us. So about 6 years ago, we hired a developer and started building our own e-commerce system built for our business. About 2 years into it, kind of like Hen Gear, we got farms asking, hey, I need a website solution just like you guys have. So we made a step and we basically turned our custom e-commerce system into what's called a SaaS business, so that we can just hit a button and click duplicate, and it duplicates the entire e-commerce system on a new server. And so we license our e-commerce system now to about 450 direct marketing farms, and some of them are just food companies. And we've got butcher shops in Philadelphia We've got grocery stores, small independent grocery stores using this food e-commerce system that just solves 3 or 4 critical problems that out of the box e-commerce software hasn't solved yet. So that's a whole new venture that's just happened in the last 4 years.
No, I think it's, again, I had you on because I know it's an interesting story. I think that a lot of my listeners and viewers are like going, hey man, this is some really good stuff. I know that I like, well, another one of my books I got to tout, my book for entrepreneurs and business people. I talked at great length about make sure that you always are not paying attention to your competition, looking at ways people are doing stuff and saying, not copying it, but what did they just give me inspiration for that I could probably be doing? And that's why it's neat about this Graze Cart, incidentally, not like Gray's Anatomy, Graze like an animal out on pasture, Graze Cart.
Yes.
And they can find that. What questions did I not ask you to that I should have asked? Brice, what should I have asked? What do we not cover that you think we should have covered?
You know what, I guess, when it comes to, on the poultry side or on the poultry equipment side, I would have to say innovation, trying to keep up, because in the last few years, we're starting to see, it's getting a little noisy. You're starting to see some other guys coming in, doing sort of same deal. So like, what can we be doing to, to continue this innovative idea, I guess, of coming up with better equipment and such. So that's the kind of question I like to be asked is what is it we can be doing differently to keep coming up with new ideas, new products, make things easier and better for the customer. Mm-hmm.
And that's where we've been in a position both on the software side and the equipment side with what Brice is doing, is that we're in the business as well. And so we're always looking for that next problem that we can solve and next way that we can innovate, make ourselves just a step above the competition. And then we take those innovations, whether it's through Hen Gear or even an e-commerce software like Graze Cart, and we share those with others. And that keeps us continuing, pushing the curve on innovation. As you can probably tell, we just love to do new things and try new things. It's one of our, actually, it's probably, you talk about things we should mention. Some of the mistakes that we've made, Damian, has been over diversifying. So we have a term for it. It's called death by diversity. And we came from that commodity conventional background where things were so, it was just monoculture. We planted corn and soybeans, and we had a fail to finish hog operation. And we had one customer, Tyson Foods, that we sold the hogs to.
Right.
And so as we ventured into regenerative agriculture, we saw all these opportunities, and we very quickly over diversified and spread ourselves too thin. There's a balance there, and I almost see every farm that follows similar paths that we went down make that same mistake, is over diversifying, and they're just not focused enough. And that can get you discouraged.
It's a challenge because we talk about it, agriculture used to be 100 years ago, every farming operation had everything. You had the turkeys and the chickens and the hogs and it grew oats, which nobody does anymore. It was everything. And then it became specialized because that's how you stay in business. You get really damn good at growing two things, producing one thing, whatever. And then it's like, okay, man, I'm not big enough to be of scale at a commodity level, so I got to do some more diversification. And then it's the old thing, even in my business, which, whether it's delivering presentations and writing books, I don't want to be everything to all people. I'm an ag and business guy. You want somebody to come in and talk to you about leadership and training your troops. That's not me, so it's the old thing. You can't be everything to everybody, but you've always got to fail a little bit. I think you got to do this thing. It's like, what did we learn? Which brings me to the last thing: lessons, takeaways, ideas. Rapid fire before we close out here. Brice, lessons, takeaways, ideas, some young guy like you in agriculture was to share with all of our listeners and viewers.
Yeah. So, on the, I want to speak specifically to like production with laying hens, we touched a lot on this, that death by diversity. So trying to stay, being focused, trying to stay focused. So again, I shared some examples of raising ready-to-lay poults. That was a big one that we learned, getting out of that side of it, because raising day-old chicks was just, it was a nightmare trying to do on operation. It's a whole nother ballgame. Let's let the professionals do that. Feed, like the chicken feed. We have our own mill here. We were grinding our own feed, the whole 9 yards, and it was just it was, as there's a lot of details that go into milling feed. So, we're not professionals at that either. So that was another area that we had to shave off. So constantly trying to figure out, the areas of focus where you can, where your time can be better served, and, just figure out more efficient ways of doing things. So that's probably the biggest thing on the poultry side, is just trying to focus.
Do a lot of stuff, but also farm out what you're really not good at. That doesn't
exactly.
We have a little thing that we say around the farm, and that's know what you know what you don't know, and know who knows what you don't. And so we've really applied that to all aspects of our business, and building our little team here on the farm.
Know what you know what you don't know,
and know who knows what you don't.
There you go. I like it. All right. Seven Sons, if they want to check out sevensons.com, is that it?
Yes. Sevensons.net, actually. I think Tom takes it to the same place, maybe.
So go there and check out. You can find Blaine and Brice and the other 52 people in their family that are all begin with the name B, the letter B, I'm sorry. This episode of the Business of Agriculture, once again, brought to you by Harvest Profit, a software solution for your agricultural enterprise. You got all kinds of dollars at risk. You got different things in play. For God's sakes, get a software solution that can handle your accounting, manage all of your inputs and your outputs, and manage it like a business. You're past the point of doing this on a seed corn notepad in the glove compartment of your truck, right? Go to harvestprofit.com for your free 14-day trial. Blaine and Brice Hitzfield, thanks for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Also, dear listeners, again, please subscribe and share this with your non-ag friends. Till next time, it's the Business of Agriculture.